Hey, my handsome ladies and gentlemen, this is Shmeaty. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. Is your fridge running, or Shmeaty running fridge in the Fantasy Cup? We are going to be taking a look at a Hundo level 50 FRIGIBAX I was able to clutch up at the New York Go Fest thanks to a community call out. Those events are always so much fun. The team is Fridge Double Azu with a Tapu Fini as well as an Azumarill in the back. This team, not at all recommended. Please don't try to run a level 50 FRIGIBAX under any context, even in a limited meta, if you think it's a good idea. I don't even think it's a good idea. Speaking of not a good idea, FRIGIBAX going to be on Dragon Breath, tearing through the Turtonator's HP, and we do have access to Avalanche. We are not an Icy Wind FRIGIBAX. Avalanche nearly one-shots, but the Turtonator will get damage registration error and be able to fire off a move that they don't deserve. As you see, that Dragon Breath KOs afterward. We didn't get an extra Dragon Breath there. So, a little bit of an inconsistency to start off the match, never a good sign. We are going to be able to get another Avalanche off onto the incoming Corviknight. We're not under a lot of threat by the Sand Attack chip, so we are going to fire off that Avalanche. It does more than 50% to the Corviknight, and we are in a very good spot. But what won't have me in a very good spot is the Galarian Weezing. Weezing going to hit the field and overfarm quite a lot, taking the Ice Beam, and now they're going to be able to fire off a Sludge. I'm going to have to no-shield both Sludges here, and this is going to get really tough for me. I go for the undertap of my Ice Beam, knowing that they are doubled up. I hope that Azu can live this Sludge, but just barely not able to. And this is a problem. I don't think I can win this game, and I think it's going to come down to me having to give up that shield earlier on. Sludge going to be shielded by the Tapu Fini, and now we're going to overfarm to just when they get their Sludge, bring in the FRIGIBAX, and FRIGIBAX going to be sacked to the Poke Gods. Thank you, Jamie Finn, for that quote. We are going to see the Corviknight come in. Corviknight gets the Sand Attack through, and they are going to be able to fire off an Air Cutter. The Air Cutter does not get the boost. Tapu Fini looking to make as much of an impact as it can. Nature's Madness is aimed at the 2-shield Corviknight, not for the KO, but to get that defense drop so that we can hopefully be able to KO with the preceding water guns. Unfortunately, Corviknight's able to make a move, and this would be a prime time to have that shield that I gave up earlier in the game. Nevertheless, GG's to the opponent. Getting into the next one, it's going to be FRIGIBAX leading into a Galarian Stunfisk. This, not at all the matchup that I want to stay in, but since we're not under a lot of threat due to their fast move pressure, I'm able to stay in, bank a bunch of energy on my FRIGIBAX, get a whole Avalanche for later on in the game, and now bring in Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini going to eat an Earthquake, and unfortunately going to be met with an Azumarill. Azumarill is unfortunately going to be able to pick up the KO at any time they want with an Ice Beam, but not before we're able to fire off this Nature's Madness. Nature's Madness here is going to do a sizable amount of chip onto the Azu, surprisingly, and I'm going to actually decide to make a pretty interesting play and shield up that Ice Beam. The reason being is because I can go for this Nature's Madness. Nature's Madness is likely to grab a shield from the Azu. It does, and now they're going to go for the farm down, and I'm just going to bring in FRIGIBAX. We have the Avalanche loaded. Avalanche is a very good move, so Avalanche onto the -2 Azu is going to pick up the knockout, and I don't think the trader was expecting that result. I'm going to build up to the Avalanche, and this time, instead of switching out, I'm going to send the Avalanche. Avalanche onto the Stunfisk is going to grab a shield there. Very afraid after seeing that damage that it did to the -2 Azu. They are going to now fire off an Earthquake at my Azu. I'm not going to shield my Azu in this matchup because I feel as if I want my shield for my FRIGIBAX. I think that's a pretty safe play. It's a little bit on the glassier side. They're going to bring in a Sand Slash in the back. This is going to be a very difficult game for me to be able to come back from. It fires off the Play Rough. It's not going to do a lot of chip onto that Sand Slash. Going for another Play Rough here. They CMP time me. I'm not going to shield. I think I need to save the shield for the FRIGIBAX regardless. They go for the Ice Punch. That's not going to be enough damage. And now Azu's going to be able to make that Play Rough. Play Rough going to nearly KO the Sand Slash. Sand Slash will be forced to throw a move at the FRIGIBAX. But now, I think we have control of this game. It was drifting out of our favor for quite some time. In comes the Stunfisk. Stunfisk, before it's able to make a Rock Slide, going to be met with an Avalanche. Stunfisk is going to get KO'd by this Avalanche. And now, it's all up to if we can farm down the Sand Slash, and FRIGIBAX takes out 2 Steel types. Getting into the next one. FRIGIBAX into an Azumarill, not at all the lead that I was hoping to see. But all things considered, Avalanche is a really good move there, so even if you're stuck in that matchup, you can kind of play it out and get some damage onto the Azu. Definitely not your preference, and this is definitely not a Pokemon that you want to see, but it isn't the worst. If you see an Empoleon with this team, you're just going to lose. If you see a Scizor on lead with this team, you're just going to lose. If you see a Dedenne in general, you're just going to lose. Anyway, I'm going to fire off the Nature's Madness at the Azu, and I'm going to no-shield whatever they decide to throw at my Tapu Fini. They go for the Play Rough. It's not going to be enough to KO. In comes a Corviknight, and Corviknight is going to be met with a Surf from the Tapu Fini. And now, I think we just got to switch into the FRIGIBAX. No, we're going to stay in, and now we switch into the FRIGIBAX, looking for the catch of the Air Cutter, making sure that FRIGIBAX isn't going to take a hefty amount of damage. It was a very enticing Air Cutter, and I stayed in just until they got it, because I wanted to make sure that the Tapu Fini was still on the field, so that they were enticed to throw the Air Cutter. Nevertheless, we're going to be able to build up to the Avalanche and send the Avalanche at the Corviknight. This should either force a shield or a KO. They are going to shield it up. And now the Corviknight is going to be able to throw an Air Cutter basically whenever they want. They're not counting closely enough. I wasn't close enough to the move to warrant them throwing that Air Cutter there, but it is what it is. I am going to bring in the Tapu Fini, look to make a catch onto the Azumarill. I am going to be able to make that catch successfully. Banking that Surf for later is going to be very nice for us. Going to look for the Bubble Down of the Corviknight, the opponent, maybe thinking they're able to make the move, not quite able to do so. And now, in comes a Turtonator, and if you ever send in a Turtonator into an Azumarill, you are in a truly terrible position. I'm going to fire off the Ice Beam. My Azu is getting chipped ever so slightly lower, but I'm able to fire off double Ice Beam, and although double Ice Beam isn't particularly threatening here, we can get the Bubble Down, and Turtonator's energy is 0% of the time ever going to be threatening to an Azumarill. They are going to fire off some energy here onto my Azu. Azu eats the Dragon Claw for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and now we're looking for the Bubble Down. They're going to be able to fire off another move. Azu does not have to shield this one either. And now, Overheat does connect for some pretty decent damage, and now in comes their Azumarill. I'm going for the Nature's Madness. I need to grab the shield from this Azumarill, and the moment I do, this game is won. I have the move loaded with my Azumarill. Their switch timer is not close to being up quite yet, so I bring in my Azumarill. I'm not going to take that bubble damage, and now I can throw the Play Rough at the debuff defense of the Azu. It would have been enough to KO there anyway. In comes the Turtonator. It gets bubbled down. GG's to this trainer. Alright, getting into the next one. Whoa, that's a Latias on my screen. Alright, we are going to see FRIGIBAX stay in for a couple Dragon Breaths just to get some initial chip damage, and now bring in the Tapu Fini. I don't anticipate that the Latias is going to stay in for very long in this matchup, as it would have to go down shields or eat a Nature's Madness, which I don't think either of those things are on the menu for the Latias. I'm correct in that assumption. Latias switches out into Shmeaty. Shmeaty going to be able to get a pretty easy Astonish down, and now in comes FRIGIBAX looking to make a potential move up against the Shmeaty. Shmeaty going to bait with a Seed Bomb. I believe that was enough for a Sludge Bomb. I forget. I get the movesets with this Pokemon and the other Mushroom Pokemon, Amoonguss. I get them confused all the time. I'm going to go for the Avalanche. Avalanche is going to pick up the KO. And now, bringing in Azu. I don't know if Azu has enough juice in the tank here. This is going to be a very uphill game for me. I'm going to fire off an Ice Beam at the Latias. Latias going to be forced to shield it up, and now firing off what is likely going to be a Mist Ball. I realize that the Mist Ball probably does more than a non-Shadow Empoleon move, as Mist Ball is a very, very good move. So, I shield it up, build up to another Ice Beam, and now I'm sending another Ice Beam at the Latias. Latias going to shield up Ice Beam number 2, going down both shields, bringing in the FRIGIBAX. FRIGIBAX hoping to make an Avalanche there. Unfortunately, no Avalanche is to be. They go for the Aura Sphere, and now Azu has to farm down the Latias. In comes the Empoleon. We do have a shield. I think I don't want to shield just yet, because if that Latias is able to make a Mist Ball, we will just lose the game. So I'm going to fire off a Play Rough. Play Rough onto the Empoleon just is not going to do enough damage, and another Drill Peck is going to get us very, very low, even in Aura Sphere range. I'm going to no shield. I debate clicking the shield button, as you can see there. I go for as much of an overfarm as I can, because the Metal Claws, or excuse me, the Metal Sounds are going to do sizable amount of chip. And now in comes Latias. We have to farm down and leave with a move. That's the only win con, because we need to be able to fire off a move at the Empoleon. But unfortunately, our Azu is going to fall just short. They make the back-to-back Aura Sphere. That was a pretty fun game. GG's. Alright, now getting into the next one, it's going to be FRIGIBAX leading into a Dragonite. Not the worst. I am, of course, going to stay in here for a little bit. And what I like to do in this matchup is, as you can tell by our health, one Dragon Breath is going to be the make or break factor here. I don't think they'll make a second Thunder Punch, so I'm going to go for the full farm down with my, what is this, FRIGIBAX? Sorry, I'm running the Pokemon and I forgot the name of it, but I am going to go for the Avalanche onto the Galarian Stunfisk. The reason why we go for Avalanche instead of Dragon Claw there is Avalanche is by far the more efficient charge move. Avalanche is, I believe, a Psystrike clone at 45 energy, 90 damage, and Dragon Claw does 80 damage base, so, and it's also more expensive. Bringing in the Azu to absorb the Earthquake. In the back they have an Excadrill. Excadrill, very fun Pokemon, but not going to have a very fun time up against the Azumarill. Azumarill going for the Ice Beam, able to get the shield from the Excadrill, and I have a choice here. I can either decide to shield up my Azu or not. I'm going to no-shield my Azu here. They go for the Drill Run, and now I think Tapu Fini can commit to a one-shield farm down versus this Excadrill. It's going to be close. Exca fires off the Drill Run, looking to make another move, realizes they're getting their health torn through, bringing in the G-Fish. G-Fish not going to be able to make a move. Down goes the Exca. GG's. Alright, FRIGIBAX into Scizor. This is a very difficult matchup. Fortunately, the game did not want me to play it out, as I didn't want to play it out either. FRIGIBAX leading into a Corviknight in the next game. This is pretty difficult if they do run Iron Head. Most of them do not, though. I'm going to build up to the Avalanche and fire off the Avalanche at the Corviknight. This will do a sizable amount of damage, and Corviknight would likely want to throw at the FRIGIBAX, but they opt not to. They're going to fire off a move at my Azumarill, whatever it is. Azu can take it with ease. It's going to be an Air Cutter, and it seems as if this trainer does not have a good response to Azu at all. Staying in and throwing a bunch of Air Cutters with your Corviknight when you have the ability to switch is a pretty bad way of using your energy. They do get the Air Cutter boost there. They're double shielding the Corviknight, and Azu can grab both shields and commit to a full farm down of this Corviknight if I want to. I am going to go for the bubble farm down here. They are going to be able to make another Air Cutter, and it is boosted, so we're going to leave in the red health. But we have another Pokemon that has similar coverage to Azu, so I feel safe in no-shielding a bunch of times, and in comes their own Azumarill. Now, like I said earlier on in the video, although we are completely walled here, this move, Avalanche, is so good that it can put in a sizable amount of chip onto the Azu. We're going to paste circles around the Azu and be able to fire off another Avalanche, getting the Azu to about 50% HP, which is not what I would have otherwise expected from the Ice Dragon Pokemon. I'm going to let this move go. No, we're actually going to preserve our FRIGIBAX here, and now look to bring in our own Azumarill. We go for the CMP sack swap, meaning that their Azu had to click a move. Oh my goodness, we win CMP, and that is a devastating amount of energy wasted by the opposing Azu. Bringing back in the FRIGIBAX. FRIGIBAX looking to build up to the back-to-back Avalanches here. We go for this Avalanche, not expecting the FRIGIBAX to be our answer to the Azu. Are we going to get the Dragon Breath farm down? I think we may have been able to, but I didn't want to risk it, so we're going to go for the Avalanche here. Azu is going to shield it up. It is the CMP tie. I'm shielding up my FRIGIBAX in return. It's going to be an Ice Beam. We might be able to make an Avalanche versus the last Pokemon, and we see now why they needed to preserve their Pokemon up against seeing the Azu, but it's just not going to help them. In comes Tapu Fini. The opponent realizes they're never going to be able to get rid of the Tapu Fini. GG's to them. Alright, in the next game, FRIGIBAX leading into another Azumarill. Of course, not exactly ideal, so we are going to immediately safe switch into Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini will make a Nature's Madness at the same time the Azu makes the Play Rough, and we are going to go for the risky CMP tie. Nature's Madness will do a pretty sizable amount onto the Azu, and they're staying in here, meaning that they probably need this chip onto the Tapu Fini, so I'm pretty comfortable with shielding it up. They actually do end up needing that chip onto the Tapu Fini. They will end up outpacing. In comes a Steelix in the back. Steelix is on Dragon Tail, meaning that Tapu Fini can afford to no-shield multiple Psychic Fangs here and not really be in much of any threat at all. It will be 3 Dragon Tails to their next Psychic Fang, so I am going to fire off the Surf just before they make it. I was hoping to make a catch there, but realistically now, I could just stay in with the Tapu Fini because no amount of Psychic Fang's debuffs is going to allow them to be able to Dragon Tail down my Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini goes for the Surf, it does pick up the KO, in comes the Azumarill. Do I want to shield up my Tapu Fini twice? We do not. They're going to go for the Ice Beam. In comes FRIGIBAX. FRIGIBAX looking to get an energy lead here, and now I'm going to go for this Avalanche. I think Avalanche might just barely be outside of range of KOing the Azu here. They are going to be able to hold on, and I think we're just going to let it go. FRIGIBAX bulk check, anything shy of the Hundo would get KO'd, but we're able to survive, get the bubble farm down with our own Azu. They're not going to be able to make any move that is not named Ice Beam, so we are in a pretty good spot to no shield this Ice Beam and continue to go for the bubble farm down. They do still have the Steelix alive, actually. It is on 1 HP in the back. They bring in the Turtonator. Turtonator goes for an attempted catch, but unfortunately, it's just not to be. Now we are going to be able to commit to the double play rough here. Double play rough will be enough to KO the Turtonator, despite having a shield and a pretty massive amount of energy here. The Turtonator just doesn't have the moveset to be able to combat up against an Azumarill. So they go for the charge move here, but it's just always a comfortable no shield for Azu. Even if they're running Flash Cannon, it just doesn't do enough damage, and they realize that and top left. Getting into the next one, it's going to be FRIGIBAX leading into a Jirachi. Now this is a problem. I'm going to build up a little bit of energy, then bring in Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini, not really too comfortable up against the Jirachi either. I am going to shield up the first Doom Desire. Doom Desire is now a Hydro Cannon clone. They are going to bring in Corviknight as their response to my Tapu Fini. And Tapu Fini is likely in a range where an Air Cutter plus some Sand attacks might actually be enough to KO. I'm going to go for Surf number 2 up against the Corviknight. Being able to pressure the Corviknight here is a pretty good spot for the Tapu Fini. They are going to be able to fire off a move here. If they have one of the heavier hitting moves, I will get KO'd, but they only have Air Cutter. I'm bringing in the FRIGIBAX, looking for the farm down, getting the farm down onto that Corviknight. Corviknight was able to get the attack boost, but it's not going to matter very much. FRIGIBAX is now going to be tasked with potentially either taking a Doom Desire or just getting straight up KO'd. In comes an Azumarill, and I need to burn my switch timer. I really would like to be able to preserve my FRIGIBAX. I just don't think that's going to be possible. I'm going to throw one, and now look to go for an Avalanche here. Avalanche up against the Azu. We do have our switch available, but unfortunately, Tapu Fini's not able to make the catch that we need. What is good about this is that the Azu is forced to throw an Ice Beam, which might not be the best thing ever, but I can bring in my own Azu. They bring in their Jirachi, and now I can continue to overfarm quite a lot here. And Jirachi is a little bit on the glacier side. It's not straight up like no bulk at all, but as you can see, these bubbles are doing pretty visible damage to them. I'm going to go for this Ice Beam, hoping that I can grab a shield from them, and now bringing in the FRIGIBAX. FRIGIBAX will be able to make the Avalanche, and if they want to keep this Jirachi energy, they have to shield. They are going to let the Jirachi go. In comes their Azumarill, but Azumarill has to fire off a move here. I think this game has gone from a devastatingly bad position to one where we might be able to pull off a win. I'm going to be able to fire off the play rough at the opposing Azu, and the Azu, they're not going to be able to make another play rough before I can. My Azu doesn't have a shield, but this is not play rough range. Azu's going to be able to live the next few bubbles, making that play rough. They don't even have the move on CMP, so we're going to be able to dispatch their Azu with a play rough, and I don't know how we won a game versus the Jirachi lead. Getting into the next game, FRIGIBAX into the Excadrill. Excadrill is going to stay in way too long versus the Tapu Fini. I just wanted to bamboozle them a little bit and maybe make them like take a lot of damage from some water guns, but they stood in and threw away their entire Excadrill. They're going to be able to grab my shield here and no shield my Surf, realizing that their Excad's job has largely been done because unfortunately I played into the losing CMP tie with my Tapu Fini. I thought I was going to be able to outpace them by a turn. I was not able to. Bringing in the Azu is my opposing trainer, going to be able to soak the Nature's Madness, but that defense drop is not to be taken lightly. I am going to be able to no-shield whatever move the Azu goes for. Even an Ice Beam from that range would likely KO the glassy Tapu Fini. I'm going to bring in my own Azumarill here, getting one turn bring in. I do not get a bubble through when I should. Pretty unfortunate for me. Play Rough is going to connect onto my Azu, but my Azu not going to take that much damage from a Play Rough. I'm going to overfarm as much as I can, then go for my own Play Rough. Hoping to get rid of this Azu here, as we do have a FRIGIBAX in the back, so maybe not the best thing ever for us. They are going to shield up their Azu, maybe realizing that they needed to get rid of the FRIGIBAX. I'm not entirely sure what the rationale is there. They are debuffed, but I don't think a debuff is going to make the difference where an Ice Beam will be enough to KO, so I decide to commit to the Play Rough. They double shield their Azu, and that's pretty telling. I am going to be forced to take another Play Rough here, but Azu's still not in Play Rough range, and now I can go for an Ice Beam to get the KO onto the Azu because I bubbled them into a range where now the Ice Beam will be enough to KO, and I can leave with a little bit of residual energy. In the back, they have a Flygon, and listen, they handed out the 9-turn pacing like candy this season, but Flygon was not a recipient. GG's to this trainer. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Hundo FRIGIBAX in the Fantasy Cup, definitely not a recommended pick. The reason for that is because if you notice, it's Dragon and Ice typing. It means that it's weak to all 3 of the eligible typings for this cup. That is the Steel, Dragon, and Fairy typing. All of them can hit FRIGIBAX for super effective damage, and most of the Pokemon that are common in this cup have a move that can hit FRIGIBAX for pretty substantial damage. As you can see, that Play Rough from the Azu, although it's like single stage super effective, generally a Pokemon wouldn't take that much damage. FRIGIBAX is a very, very glassy Pokemon, but with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I've been Shmeaty. I thank you once again so much for watching. I hope to see you all again next time, and have a good rest of your day. See ya.